A 93-year-old nurse named Dorothy sits in her small kitchen every morning at exactly 6:30 a.m., preparing the same breakfast she's eaten for the past 30 years. Her hands move with the confidence of someone who has spent decades caring for others. But today, she's about to share something that could change your life forever. Dorothy isn't like most people her age. While her neighbors struggle with walkers, wheelchairs, and constant pain medication, she still tends to her garden, climbs stairs without holding the railing, and moves through her day with an energy that defies her years. The secret isn't in expensive supplements or complicated medical treatments. It's in what she puts on her plate every single day. 3 years ago, Dorothy made a promise to herself. After watching too many of her friends lose their independence to pain and immobility, she decided to document everything she knew about nutrition and aging. What she discovered wasn't just interesting, it was revolutionary. The foods that keep bodies strong and pain-free aren't exotic or expensive. They're sitting in grocery stores right now, waiting for people to understand their true power. Before we dive deep into Dorothy's wisdom, I want you to know that everything you're about to learn has been tested not in laboratories, but in real life, by real people who refuse to accept that aging means suffering. If you're ready to discover how food can be your medicine, how simple choices can transform your daily experience, and how a 93-year-old nurse figured out what doctors often miss, then stay with me until the end. And please, take a moment to share where you're watching from today. Your story matters, and I'd love to hear about your own journey with health and aging in the comments below. Now let's talk about why Dorothy's approach is so different from everything you've probably heard before. Most people think about food in terms of calories, weight loss, or basic nutrition, but Dorothy learned something during her 50 years of nursing that changed everything. She noticed that patients who ate certain foods consistently experienced less inflammation, better mobility, and faster recovery times. It wasn't coincidence. It was science that hadn't been properly explained. The human body after 60 is like a finely tuned instrument that needs specific fuel to perform optimally. The inflammation that causes joint pain, the cellular damage that leads to stiffness, the muscle loss that steals strength, all of these can be addressed through targeted nutrition. But it's not about eating more, it's about eating smarter. Dorothy discovered that the key lies in understanding how different foods interact with aging processes. Some foods act like accelerants, speeding up the breakdown of joints and muscles. Others work like protective shields, defending against damage and actually reversing some of the effects of time. The difference between a painful day and a comfortable one often comes down to what was eaten the day before. Let me tell you about Robert, a 78-year-old retired carpenter who came to Dorothy's attention 3 years ago. Robert had been living on pain medication for his arthritis, barely able to hold his coffee cup in the morning. His knees screamed every time he stood up, and his hands were so stiff he couldn't button his shirts. His doctor told him it was just part of getting older. Dorothy spent one afternoon with Robert, walking through his typical daily meals. What she found wasn't surprising to her anymore. His diet was filled with foods that were literally feeding his inflammation. Processed meats for breakfast, white bread at lunch, sugary snacks throughout the day, and dinners heavy in refined ingredients. His body was under constant inflammatory attack. She didn't ask Robert to change everything at once. Instead, she introduced him to what she calls the 3-pillar approach. 3 specific types of foods that, when eaten consistently, begin to rebuild the body's natural defense systems against pain and immobility. The first pillar is what Dorothy calls joint protectors. These are foods rich in compounds that actually lubricate joints and reduce inflammation at the cellular level. We're talking about fatty fish like salmon and sardines, loaded with omega-3 fatty acids that work like natural anti-inflammatory medication. But here's what most people don't know. The type of omega-3 matters enormously. The omega-3s in fish oil supplements often can't match the bioavailability of those found in whole fish. Dorothy always tells people to think of their joints like door hinges. Without the right oil, they squeak, stick, and eventually break down. Omega-3s are that oil, but only when they come from the right sources and in the right combinations. Walnuts are another joint protector that Dorothy swears by. Just a handful each day provides alpha-lanolinic acid, a plant-based omega-3 that reduces inflammatory markers in the blood. But walnuts do something else remarkable. They help the body process and utilize other anti-inflammatory compounds more effectively, creating a synergistic effect that amplifies the benefits of everything else you eat. Then there are the leafy greens, specifically spinach, kale, and Swiss chard. These aren't just sources of vitamins. They contain compounds called flavonoids that actively block the enzymes responsible for creating inflammatory chemicals in the body. Dorothy has watched patients reduce their joint pain by 40% or more simply by adding 2 cups of leafy greens to their daily diet. The second pillar Dorothy discovered is what she calls muscle maintainers. After age 60, the body loses muscle mass at an alarming rate. But most people don't realize that this loss isn't inevitable. It's largely dietary. Protein is obvious, but the timing and type of protein makes all the difference. Dorothy learned that older bodies need more protein than younger ones, but they also need it distributed throughout the day, not just at dinner. She recommends starting each day with eggs, not because they're convenient, but because they contain all essential amino acids in the exact ratios the body needs for muscle synthesis. But here's where Dorothy's approach gets interesting. She pairs protein with specific vitamins that enhance muscle building. Vitamin D, which most people over 60 are deficient in, doesn't just support bone health. It directly impacts muscle strength and coordination. Dorothy makes sure her followers understand that vitamin D deficiency can make even the best protein useless for muscle maintenance. Quinoa became Dorothy's secret weapon for muscle maintenance. Unlike most grains, quinoa is a complete protein containing all 9 essential amino acids. But it also provides magnesium, which is crucial for muscle function and often depleted in older adults. Dorothy has seen people regain strength and stability simply by replacing rice or pasta with quinoa 3 times per week. The third pillar is perhaps the most powerful: cellular regenerators. These are foods that don't just prevent damage, they actively repair it. Blueberries top this list, but not for the reasons most people think. Yes, blueberries are high in antioxidants, but they also contain compounds called anthocyanins that cross the blood-brain barrier and directly protect neural pathways involved in balance and coordination. Dorothy has watched elderly patients improve their balance and reduce fall risk significantly by eating just half a cup of blueberries daily. Turmeric is another cellular regenerator that Dorothy considers non-negotiable. The curcumin in turmeric doesn't just reduce inflammation, it actually helps damaged cells repair themselves. But curcumin is poorly absorbed on its own. Dorothy always combines it with black pepper and a healthy fat, like olive oil, to increase absorption by up to 2,000%. Sweet potatoes provide beta-carotene, which the body converts to vitamin A for tissue repair, plus complex carbohydrates that provide steady energy without blood sugar spikes. Dorothy learned that stable blood sugar is crucial for managing inflammation and maintaining energy levels throughout the day. Let me return to Robert's story. Within 6 weeks of following Dorothy's 3-pillar approach, something remarkable happened. Robert called Dorothy on a Tuesday morning, and she could hear the excitement in his voice. He had woken up without pain for the first time in 2 years. His hands weren't stiff. His knees didn't hurt when he stood up. By 3 months, Robert had reduced his pain medication by half. By 6 months, he was pain-free most days and had started woodworking again. His doctor was amazed, but Dorothy wasn't surprised. She had seen this transformation dozens of times. The key wasn't just in what Robert ate, but how he ate it. Dorothy taught him about food combinations that maximize nutrient absorption and minimize inflammatory responses. She showed him that timing matters, that certain foods work better at specific times of day. For example, Dorothy always recommends eating anti-inflammatory foods like berries and nuts in the morning when cortisol levels are naturally higher. The antioxidants help counteract the inflammatory effects of stress hormones. Protein-rich foods work best in the afternoon when the body is most efficient at building and repairing muscle tissue. But Dorothy's approach goes beyond just what to eat. She understands that sustainable change happens gradually, with respect for individual preferences and limitations. She never asks people to eliminate entire food groups or follow restrictive diets. Instead, she focuses on additions and substitutions that feel natural and sustainable. If someone loves bread, Dorothy doesn't tell them to stop eating it. She suggests switching to sourdough or sprouted grain breads that are easier to digest and less inflammatory. If someone craves sweets, she recommends dark chocolate with at least 70% cacao, which provides flavonoids that actually benefit cardiovascular health. Dorothy also learned that hydration plays a crucial role in pain management. Dehydration thickens the synovial fluid that lubricates joints, leading to increased friction and pain. She recommends starting each day with a large glass of water with a pinch of sea salt and lemon juice to optimize hydration at the cellular level. But perhaps the most important thing Dorothy discovered is that food affects mood and mental clarity just as much as physical comfort. The omega-3s that reduce joint inflammation also support brain health and emotional stability. The B vitamins in leafy greens and whole grains support neurotransmitter production, improving mood and cognitive function. Dorothy has watched elderly patients not just become more comfortable physically, but more optimistic, more engaged, and more confident. When pain decreases and energy increases, people naturally become more social, more active, and more interested in life. It's a positive cycle that starts with simple food choices. Let me share another story that illustrates Dorothy's approach. Margaret, an 85-year-old retired teacher, came to Dorothy barely able to walk from her bedroom to her kitchen without stopping to rest. Margaret had diabetes, arthritis, and chronic fatigue that left her feeling defeated and hopeless. Dorothy didn't focus on Margaret's diseases. Instead, she focused on Margaret's goals. Margaret wanted to be able to play with her great-grandchildren again, to cook meals for her family, to feel useful and energetic. Dorothy showed Margaret how specific foods could support those goals. For Margaret's diabetes, Dorothy emphasized foods with a low glycemic index that wouldn't spike blood sugar. Steel-cut oats with cinnamon and walnuts for breakfast provided sustained energy and blood sugar stability. Legumes like lentils and chickpeas became Margaret's new best friends, providing protein and fiber that helped regulate glucose levels naturally. For Margaret's arthritis, Dorothy introduced anti-inflammatory spices and herbs. Ginger tea became Margaret's morning ritual, providing compounds that reduce inflammatory cytokines. Fresh garlic in cooking provided sulfur compounds that support joint health and circulation. For Margaret's fatigue, Dorothy focused on foods rich in iron and B vitamins. Grass-fed beef once a week provided easily absorbed iron. Nutritional yeast sprinkled on vegetables provided B12 and other energy-supporting nutrients. Within 2 months, Margaret was walking around her neighborhood again. Within 4 months, she was babysitting her great-grandchildren. Within 6 months, she was hosting family dinners again. Her blood sugar had stabilized, her joint pain had decreased significantly, and her energy levels had returned to what they were 10 years earlier. Dorothy's approach worked because it addressed the root causes of age-related decline rather than just managing symptoms. Instead of accepting pain and immobility as inevitable parts of aging, Dorothy showed people how to actively fight back with targeted nutrition. But Dorothy also understands that knowledge without action is useless. She developed simple strategies to help people implement these changes without feeling overwhelmed. She calls it the one change rule. Every week, people add just one new healthy food or eliminate one inflammatory food. The changes accumulate gradually, making the transition feel natural rather than forced. Week 1 might be adding a handful of walnuts to breakfast. Week 2 might be replacing white rice with quinoa twice a week. Week 3 might be adding a cup of berries to lunch. Small changes, but they add up to significant improvements in how people feel and function. Dorothy also emphasizes the importance of quality over quantity. She'd rather see someone eat a small amount of high-quality, nutrient-dense food than large quantities of processed alternatives. Wild-caught salmon once a week is better than farmed fish every day. Organic berries, when possible, provide more antioxidants than conventional ones. Grass-fed meat contains higher levels of beneficial omega-3s. The financial aspect matters too. Dorothy learned to help people prioritize their food budget to get the most nutritional impact. She suggests investing in high-quality proteins and healthy fats while saving money on organic vegetables by buying frozen options, which often contain more nutrients than fresh produce that has traveled long distances. Dorothy's spice cabinet is legendary among her friends. She keeps turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, black pepper, and cayenne on hand at all times. These aren't just flavor enhancers, they're powerful medicines. A pinch of cayenne in morning tea improves circulation. Cinnamon on oatmeal helps regulate blood sugar. Turmeric in soup provides potent anti-inflammatory compounds. She also taught people about food preparation methods that maximize nutrition. Lightly steaming vegetables preserves more vitamins than boiling. Eating tomatoes with olive oil increases absorption of lycopene. Combining vitamin C-rich foods with iron-rich foods enhances iron absorption. But perhaps most importantly, Dorothy learned that food is medicine that works best when combined with other healthy lifestyle choices. She always recommends pairing nutritional changes with gentle movement, adequate sleep, stress management, and social connection. Movement doesn't have to be intense or complicated. Dorothy herself starts each day with 10 minutes of gentle stretching and takes a short walk after dinner. The combination of anti-inflammatory nutrition and regular movement creates synergistic effects that neither approach can achieve alone. Sleep quality improves dramatically when people reduce inflammatory foods and increase nutrients that support neurotransmitter production. Dorothy has watched people solve chronic insomnia simply by avoiding sugar and caffeine after 2 p.m. and adding magnesium-rich foods like pumpkin seeds to their evening routine. Stress management becomes easier when the body is properly nourished. The B vitamins and omega-3s that support physical health also support emotional resilience and mental clarity. People find they can handle challenges better when their bodies aren't fighting constant inflammation. Social connection often improves naturally as people feel better physically. When pain decreases and energy increases, people are more likely to accept invitations, participate in activities, and maintain relationships. Food becomes a bridge to connection rather than a source of restriction or guilt. Dorothy's refrigerator tells the story of someone who has learned to see food as fuel for an active, comfortable life. Fresh vegetables take up most of the space. High-quality proteins are carefully portioned and prepared. Healthy fats like avocados and olive oil are always available. Processed foods are rare visitors. But Dorothy isn't rigid or perfectionistic. She enjoys a piece of dark chocolate most evenings. She occasionally indulges in foods that aren't optimal for health, but feed her soul. The key is that these choices are conscious rather than habitual, occasional rather than constant. After 93 years of life and 50 years of nursing, Dorothy has learned that the body is remarkably resilient and responsive. Damage that seems permanent can often be reversed. Pain that feels overwhelming can often be managed. Decline that appears inevitable can often be slowed or stopped. The secret isn't in complex medical interventions or expensive treatments. It's in understanding how food affects every system in the body and making choices that support healing rather than harm. It's in recognizing that every meal is an opportunity to either feed disease or fight it. Dorothy's final piece of advice is perhaps the most important. Start where you are, with what you have, and be patient with the process. The body didn't reach its current state overnight, and it won't transform overnight either. But with consistent, targeted nutrition choices, significant improvements are not just possible, they're probable. Whether you're dealing with joint pain, muscle weakness, chronic fatigue, or just the general aches and pains that seem to come with aging, Dorothy's three-pillar approach offers hope and practical solutions. The joint protectors, muscle maintainers, and cellular regenerators aren't magic bullets, but they're powerful tools that can help you reclaim comfort, mobility, and energy. Tomorrow morning, you could start implementing Dorothy's wisdom. You could add omega-3 rich walnuts to your breakfast. You could replace inflammatory processed foods with healing whole foods. You could begin the journey toward a more comfortable, active, pain-free life. The choice is yours, but remember Dorothy's words. Your body is listening to every food choice you make. Make sure you're sending the right message. If Dorothy's story has inspired you or given you hope for your own health journey, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experience could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss practical, life-changing health wisdom that can make a real difference in how you feel every single day. Until next time, remember that age is just a number, but how you feel is a choice you make with every meal.